Okay, hi everybody. Tekking's hand here. Hello. I'm off camera right over here. I just wanted to warn everybody and give everyone a heads up that I have gotten a new haircut and it's a little bit of a radical change. I didn't want to just start the video off with it and freak everybody out. So just giving you a few seconds to prepare here. All right, are we good? Okay, just don't freak out. It's just a new haircut, a new hairstyle. Okay, new year. You know how it all goes. All right, here we go.
Ha ha! Yes, I understand I may have acted a little bit precipitously in going with the hockey mask look. But I like it. I like the style. Yeah, okay, no. It's the same haircut I've had since I was in, I don't know, 11th grade? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, today's Friday the 13th, though, and I didn't even realize that until right before, so I'm like, okay, there's our intro for the video. Happy Friday the 13th, everybody. Yeah, we could do some Friday the 13th caroling. That's always really fun, where you take a hockey mask, and I got one right here, and a bladed weapon, and oh, look, I happen to have a Roman gladius right here as well, and there's a lot of carols that you can sing on Friday the 13th. Probably the most notable one is, that's very popular this time of year. And then there's also one that's not used as much is the yeah, and that's pretty much all of them. There's just two, but it's a marvelous time of year. All right then, so today we're going to be talking about ancient zones. And you know what's really funny? I looked, and I do not have a single dedicated video on this channel for awaken zones. I've talked about awaken zones in plenty of videos, but more of just a general concept of awaken devil fruits, you know. Also, I've talked about Chopper's monster point, because that's always a hot topic. When Luffy went into his awakening, I talked a lot about that. Whether or not Kaido is awakened, and we'll get into that again, you know, crack open that can of worms once again. But I've never made a dedicated video on awaken zones, and it's actually probably a good thing that I didn't, because we actually just got some new information about awaken zones straight from Vegapunk a couple chapters ago when Lucci revealed his awaken zone. So, you know what? I'm just going to ask you this, because this actually kind of blew my mind as well. Without going on the wiki and double-checking or anything like that, just based off of your own memory, how many confirmed awaken zones are in One Piece? And I'm going to underline that confirmed. How many confirmed awaken zones are in this story? And that includes normal zones, ancient zones, mythical zones, all that. Confirmed awakened zone fruits. Give me a number. I'm going to give you a moment to think about it. Oh, okay, there was that character and that character. I even gave you a free one, Lucci. So Lucci's one. Okay, cool. How many? All right. Do you got your number? All right, I'm going to tell you now. And many of you are probably going to think that that number is way too low, but honestly, it's true. In terms of ones that have been confirmed, 100%, there are six confirmed 100% awakened zones in the story. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not more than that, and in fact, I would think there are, but that's all we get. So to run through them all, we first have the 4 demon guards, the jailer beasts that were introduced during the Impel Down arc that were the servants of Sadie. And we have Mino Rhinoceros, Mino Koala. I wonder if he likes Koala Man. Actually, I was been watching Koala Man. It's actually not bad. I don't understand anything about it because I'm not Australian, but Koala Man's good. Mino Tauros and Mino Zebra. All right, those are the 4 demon guards. They were confirmed by Crocodile to all be awakened zone users. Now, technically speaking, there is a 5th demon guard that was introduced over the time skip in the cover page, and that's Mino Chihuahua. However, and even though he looks exactly like all the other demon guards, right down to the runny nose, technically speaking, Mino Chihuahua was not revealed to be awakened, so at least not confirmed. He probably most likely is, but wasn't confirmed. All right, so we have the 4 demon guards. Then we have Lucci, who was just revealed to be awakened 2 chapters ago. And then finally, we have Monkey D. Luffy, who was revealed to not have a paramecia, but actually the mythical zone, the Hito Hito no Mi model sun god Nika, that was revealed in his fight with Kaido, okay? So those are the only confirmed ones that we got. because we know 100% that Luffy and Lucci both awakened, and Crocodile confirmed that the original 4 Jailer Beasts, they were awakened. That's all we have. Now, let's do a little bit of a cleanup here, because a lot of people are going to be like, wait, what about this character? I'm like, okay. So I already talked about Mino Chihuahua. Mino Chihuahua is almost certainly awakened, because he's in the same class as all the other demon guards, okay? So Mino Chihuahua, let's throw him in there. Kaido. All right. Let's talk about this now. I am fully convinced Kaido is awakened, all right? You don't need to convince me of that. I already think that, okay? But it's never been directly explained, okay? The closest we got, other than the fact that he's a giant dragon and has the flame clouds that look like the ribbon that seems indicative of awakened zones or true awakened zones, because there's different kinds of awakenings, as we're going to get to. The kind of awakening that the demon guards went through and the kind of awakening that Lucci and Luffy went through are different. We'll get to that. So Kaido, in and of himself, just looks like he's awakened. Plus, he's a Yonko that's had his fruit for like 38 years, so he's definitely awakened. But the closest thing we have to the story actually directly telling us that he's awakened is chapter 1046, after Luffy is kind of like beating him down a little bit in his awakened form, in his sun god form. Kaido sort of gets back up. He's kind of reinvigorated in the fight. He's really excited, and he's just like, yes, Straw Hat. Now, the way that it's explained in the Viz translation is this. Awakening is what happens when your mind and body catch up to your powers. That's all he says. He doesn't actually say, I am awakened as well, so therefore I would know this. Although he does happen to know a lot of information about awakenings. In chapter 1045, right after Luffy transforms, Kaido is looking at his sun god form, and he's just like, I see, you've awakened your paramecia powers. This allows you to turn the area around you into rubber, much like all other paramecias when they awaken. However, your body has also transformed, and you have the ribbon, which is indicative of a zone transformation. What are you? Right? And their fight resumed. So, I mean, I would logically look at the idea that since Kaido is probably an awakened mythical zone, he would know exactly what an awakened zone looks like to make that comparison. Also, the fact that Kaido's entire crew is filled with zone users and artificial zone users, so maybe Kaido just happens to read up a lot about on the subject. Maybe he has a big book about zones and he was just studying it, even though he's not awakened himself, which is, of course, ignoring the pink elephant in the room, because he is very clearly awakened, ladies and gentlemen, right? Like, if Kaido... Here's a question for you. If Kaido was not awakened already, what else could he do? Like, what would an awakened Kaido look like? Would it be like a solid golden dragon of death? Would it be like the red Gyarados at the Lake of Rage? You know, like rage mode Kaido. Like his scales turn red and he turns like he gets even bigger and his Boro breaths are even more devastating. Like they can annihilate islands. You know, like no, Kaido was already awakened because like I don't think Kaido could get much stronger, you know what I mean? Like, how much stronger could he get, possibly, you know what I mean? He was kind of at the peak of everything. Anyway, so yeah, Kaido is definitely awakened. Then we have some other really powerful characters that use mythical zones. Now, with mythical zones, as with Kaido, it gets a little bit more confusing, because mythicals also have traits of paramecias, like Luffy does, okay? So, it gets a little bit more like, are those characters awakened? They have special abilities, but mythicals all have special abilities. So I think you could make a pretty solid case that Sengoku is awakened, all right? Sengoku has the mythical zone, the Hito Hitonomi model Daibutsu, okay? Which actually, coincidentally, does not transform you into the Buddha. It transforms you into a Daibutsu, which is a golden statue of the Buddha, all right? Different things. Sengoku's like 78 years old. He was the fleet admiral of the Marines. He's had his fruit for a very long time. He's had his epithet of the Buddha for a very long time. You know, if you're going to pick any character that's really old and has the power of an awakened zone, I'm going to pick Sengoku. You could also maybe make a solid argument for Marco. It's not as concrete as like Kaido and Sengoku, you know, but Marco I think has a pretty good chance of being all right, you know, his Phoenix powers he's had ever since he was like 15 years old when he was an apprentice pirate on not Kaido's crew, on Whitebeard's crew. So if you want to say Marco's awakened, I'm not going to really object to that. I think that's a fair claim to make, okay? So with all that being said, if you include the 6 zones that are confirmed, the 4 demon guards plus Luffy plus Lucci, then you add Mino Chihuahua, then Kaido, then Sengoku, then Marco, we have 10. We have 10 at that point. Then we get to Chopper. All right, and so this is where we're going to start discussing the two different types of awakening when it comes to zones. And this was something that Vegapunk confirmed just a few chapters ago when Lucci went into his awakened Neko no Mi model leopard, okay? All right, so he's the awakened leopard. He looks really cool. He has like the black fur that looks like black fire that's like coming off of him. It's very indicative of the flames, the ribbons that Luffy has in Gear 4th and Gear 5th, respectively, okay? So you could say that maybe that is the icon, the trait of a true awakening. When you truly awaken your zone, you get that ribbon, okay? And so Luffy has it, Kaido technically had it, Marco maybe had it, Sengoku might have had it, I don't know, maybe it's different depending on the type of fruit, who knows? Lucci also had it, right? Okay, so the way that Vegapunk explained this, when they were observing Lucci's awakening on the monitor, he was like, Quasar, this is quite interesting. Most of the time when people awaken zone powers, they just go mindless into their primal rage. But having the ability to maintain your mind and coherency, while you're fighting, like that is something that is very rare. Not a lot of people are able to awaken a zone and still keep their mind about themselves, okay? Now keep in mind, Rob Lucci does have a carnivorous zone, so he's a little bit more, bloodthirsty. I think this video actually ties in a little bit more with Friday the 13th and Jason than I originally assumed. But most of the time, though, they just go mindless, okay? So with that being said, I'm going to divide the two types of awakenings into wild awakenings and true awakenings, all right? Now, those are just terms I just came up with because I thought they sounded cool, all right? So when it comes to wild awakenings, those are the kinds of awakenings that the demon guards had, all right? They turn into a form that is much stronger, physically and on their defense and their stamina. They can heal a lot quicker, all that kind of jazz, but they sort of become like taciturn, like they can't really talk, they can't really speak. They're just kind of like regressing back to their primal like states. And honestly, this is actually really cool because the way that Kaido explained it was awakening is what happens when your mind and body catch up with your powers. What if it's like with the wild awakenings with zones, it's instead of your like human mind catching up with it, it's the animal or like the primal spirit, because we've already established that zones have a type of a will on their own. So what happens if you awaken a zone in the wild form? It's not your mind taking over, it's the primal power of that spirit of the animal taking over, okay? So you're no longer capable of language, and you're just like, smash, Or, like, in the case with Minotaurus, because he's a cow, would be like, moo, So, the deal with the jailer beasts, I actually have a theory regarding them, okay? I have an idea that each of the jailer beasts, Mino Rhinoceros, Zebra, Minotauros, Mino Koala, and even Mino Chihuahua now, were actually prisoners that were captured, like pirates, that were thrown into Impel Down that all had zone abilities, okay? So let's say there was a pirate out there, like that was actually Koala Man, an evil version of Koala Man that had like the Koala Zone, all right? And whatever, and let's say he got really powerful with that, and he awakened it, but he didn't awaken it properly. He lost his mind about it, and he became the wild awakening of the Koala Fruit, right? So let's say they captured him, threw him in Impel Down. Let's say this happens every once in a while. There will be somebody, a pirate in the world, that eats a zone, goes crazy with an awakening, and just starts rampaging. So the government grabs them, throws them in Sea Prism, drags them into Impel Down, and at that point, Sadie takes out her whip, and because they've kind of regressed to this primal state, they could sort of be subjugated by a badass dominatrix, who, that's what Sadie's whole thing is. That's her gimmick, okay? So she whips the crap out of them and sort of like, like a pet, and then they obey her, okay? So you could look at it like that. I don't think they were actual, like, jailers. Like, they were actual, like, guards in Impel Down that ate a fruit and then awakened. Maybe they were, but I think these were pirates that got sent to Impel Down. They were raging, and then Sadie was just kind of like, oh, yes, I will allow them to be my submissives, or anything like that. And then it sort of goes that direction with it, and because that's whole Sadie's thing. And so now she kind of whips around the demon guards, and they listen to whatever she says, okay? Which is insane, because in terms of physical power, they're way stronger than Sadie. So unless Sadie had some kind of devil fruit ability or some kind of hypnosis ability with her whip that we just never knew about, she's like Dot S from One Punch Man, so whoever she whips becomes like her slave or something. Unless she has some kind of power like that, it really doesn't make any sense. Unless that like they had a downgrade in their intelligence and their wisdom and their language, and they're just more or less like wild animals that can be like domesticated or whatever. And then that's what Sadie does. Okay, so that's the situation with the demon guards, also with Mino Chihuahua. All right, so then we get to Chopper. All right. Now, Chopper's situation is entirely different. I almost put him in a third category. Like, there's wild awakenings, there's true awakenings, and then there's rumble ball awakenings. There's drugs. Okay. So Chopper's on the drugs, and so he pops the rumble ball and he goes into his monster point, which looks remarkably similar to the demon guard form. Okay. Like, it sort of like maintains the anthropomorphic, like standing on 2 feet, like bipedal form, but it also like goes just kind of crazy with power. It is a little different from the Jailer Beast, though. I will admit that. It's not exactly the same, but there are similarities. In the case with Chopper, I think because he was messing with the wavelength of his devil fruit, his rumble ball basically takes all of the different forms that he's capable of and mashes them all together in the monster point, okay? So it might actually fit better in a third category. Instead of wild awakening or true awakening, let's just put it as the rumble awakening, okay? Or the Chopper's awakening, because he's the only one that's really been messing with, well, not the only one, because Black Maria also messed around with drugs to modify her hybrid form, but not the exact same kind of thing. And her way was more out of vanity, because she didn't want to look like, she didn't want to have like a spider head, so that's how she modified it, for her own physical appearance, okay? Chopper kind of did it by accident. He developed the rumble balls on purpose in the different forms, but he didn't expect taking more than, one at the, pre-time skip would turn him into a monster, all right? So, a lot of people have considered Chopper's monster point to be an artificial version or an imperfected version of an awakening. It's not a true awakening, okay? And this has gone through some forms in and of itself. When pre-time skip, it was in that wild form, which was very similar to the Demon Guards, where Chopper was just this rampaging, raging beast that even when the Straw Hats tried to communicate with him, he had like no semblance of his former self there. Okay, he has lost himself, entirely. There was really no chance of the Straw Hats like mollifying him or anything, like calming him down. It just wasn't happening, okay? Then, after training in the Torino Kingdom, he developed a better rumble ball where he only had to take one of them, and he was able to maintain his consciousness while in this form. So you might say, oh, okay, well, maybe Chopper has a true awakening now, because now he's able to maintain his monster point. Well, I would still say no, because it still requires a drug for him to go into that form. He can't go into that form without the rumble ball. Also, he has a very strict time limit of 3 minutes while in that form. So he's still able to maintain his consciousness, but it still seems to be like a little bit on the edge with that, okay? He was basically able to maybe train with the monster point, improve the drugs with the Torino Kingdom herbs and spices and everything, and he was able to maintain consciousness. Then we have another form that Caesar, created while Chopper was traveling with Caesar to Zoan and everything. They developed an even better rumble ball, but the only real difference with that rumble ball that Caesar made was the timeline. Okay, so Chopper's able to now stay into his monster point form for 30 minutes rather than 3 minutes, but everything else is the same, okay? He doesn't technically get stronger, he just is able to stay in the form for longer, and then he has the very negative side effect of turning into Baby Gramps Chopper after he goes out of that form, which is not something that is like normal for awakenings. Like after Lucci fought against Luffy for a little while in his awakened leopard Shepherd's zone. He didn't turn into baby Gramps Lucci. Like, I'm going to get Straw Hat Luffy. Ah, where's my oatmeal? You know, like Stussy's like holding baby Gramps Lucci. That would actually be really adorable. But no, that didn't happen with Lucci. Luffy definitely had a power down moment where he kind of turned into like a desiccated corpse. You know, like, Kaido, I'm gonna beat you. I can fight all night. Okay, hold on a second. Let me restart. My heart just stopped. Oh, there it goes. And he goes back into his, fifth gear or everything like that, okay? But the baby Gramps Chopper thing, that's probably a side effect directly because of Caesar's experimentation, okay? But it's all good now because now we have Vegapunk traveling with the Straw Hats to a new destination, okay? And I want to correct one thing I said in a video I made last week. I was talking about, this was during the Kid video, talking about Kid going to Elbaf, but I mentioned in that video, like, when Vegapunk actually explains the devil fruits, like this is everything I found out about devil fruits. This is my dissertation, Quasar. Which Straw Hats would be interested in that and which ones would not. And I was like, oh yeah, Luffy and Chopper would just wander off. No, that doesn't make any sense. Luffy would wander off after about 30 seconds of the seminar. Chopper would be there taking notes. The same thing with Frankie. I think Frankie and Chopper would be the two that would be the most interested, like, in learning about this stuff, especially since Chopper literally is a scientist as well. He's a doctor that developed, he's a chemist. He developed the Rumble Ball. He's a straight up chemist. All right, medical knowledge, medical science, all that kind of stuff. So I think it would be Chopper and Frankie that would be just vigorously writing in their notebooks. Robin would also be there, but she could memorize a lot of it. She'd be taking a few notes, but she wouldn't be like, writing an entire like book next to her, but she'd be taking notes. She has really good memory. Usopp, I think, would be trying to keep up with it, but like I said, I think a lot of this would just fly over Usopp's head. It's like, have you ever taken a college class where you're really excited to learn about stuff and you sit down on the first day and you're like, man, I can't wait, and then like cut to a week later and it's like, oh god, I don't understand a single damn thing in this class, but you want to learn, it's just really complicated. That would be Usopp. And then all the other Straw Hats, like Nami would go off and do something, Zoro would fall asleep, Brook might be there like strumming his guitar, maybe paying a little bit of attention. He would like raise his hand and be like, yes, that's very interesting, Vegapunk. Can you explain to me how I exist? What's the Yomi Yomi no Mi again? And maybe Vegapunk would know. Vegapunk would be like, the Yomi Yomi no Mi, Quasar, that's a very interesting one you have there. Talking, dancing, musical skeleton? Well, you see. And then he explains it. So Brook might be, I don't think Brook would be taking notes, but he would just be interested in how his fruit works and the existence of like an afterlife. By the way, I've confirmed the existence of an afterlife. It's like, interesting, Quasar. That's like, okay. And it's a whole new realm of science then. All right. So, Yeah. And then, obviously, like, Luffy would wander off, like I said. Sanji would go into the kitchen to make dinner. He would listen for a little while, then he would just get up and leave. But yeah. So anyway, that's the situation, though. So Chopper's really interested in this. Vegapunk is there. Chopper's going to share every bit of information he has on the Rumble Ball with Vegapunk, okay? And then they're going to put their heads together, and they're going to develop a perfect Rumble Ball. I think it's perfect right there, okay? He's going to look at Caesar's Rumble Ball, Vegapunk, and he's going to be like, that Caesar clown. I tell you what, there was really no reason. Like, he's always been a little bit on the crazy mad scientist angle of things, to be honest with you. I can develop this way better, right? And he makes an artificial, he makes an artificial way to go into your awakening, but it's like a perfected way, because he's figured out everything with devil fruits, okay? So maybe Chopper might have to do some training on his own. The popular theory with Chopper is that his true awakening is not going to look like Monster Point because his devil fruit is the human fruit. It's not like the crazy rampaging reindeer fruit, okay? If Chopper was a human that ate the reindeer fruit, maybe his Monster Point makes sense, but it isn't. He's a reindeer that ate the human fruit, which means his awakening, should be more human than reindeer. Just like how Lucci's awakening is more leopard than human. Just like how Kaido's awakening, which it is more dragon than human. You know what I mean? You know where I'm getting at here? Okay. So in that situation, Chopper goes into his awakening, he shrinks down and maybe becomes like this really kind of like Gon when he goes into his adult form in Hunter x Hunter, like that kind of pose, just like, I am ultimately powerful. He maybe he still has the horns, but they're not as like crazy like with Horn Point or Monster Point. He's just like wicked fast or whatever. There's also the idea that if he awakens his zone, then he'll become like enlightened, because that's more of a translation thing, but that would be interesting. It's like, I understand everything about humanity. And I've gone into this before, so I'm not going to go crazy with it. I've talked about this recently in another video. But I just wanted to bring up Chopper because that's like kind of another like elephant in the room there. What about the Elephant Zone? What about the Elephant Zone? Is Jack awakened? Was Jack an awakened mammoth? I don't think so. I don't think Jack was an awakened mammoth. There are some other characters that have zones that I don't quite think they're awakened yet, but I think with enough training, they could become awakened very, very soon. Yamato, I don't think Yamato was awakened. Hey guys, editing Tekking here with a last-minute breaking update. I can't believe I missed this, but I was looking back at Yamato's hybrid form and the full beast form from the Okuchi no Makami fruit, and in both forms, there's a ribbon. Like, it's so obvious. Like, it's right there. There's a ribbon in the hybrid form and a ribbon in the full wolf form, okay, that Yamato turns into. So, you know what? Honestly, okay, I should have included this at the beginning, so let's just throw Yamato in there too as an Awakened Zone user. Because if we're just going along with the ribbon being indicative of that, then, well, okay, here's the thing. Because also Luffy went into Gear 4th and had the ribbon, but he also technically wasn't awakened yet. So, all right, you want to either say Yamato is awakened or right on the cusp of awakening because of the presence of the ribbon, go for it. But the ribbon is definitely there. King, you know, Pteranodon, he's had his powers for a while too, you know, right-hand man of Kaido. Don't think he was awakened, but maybe. Also, some people might bring up that, wait, wasn't King and Queen both awakened because they could do those weird things with their powers? No, that's apparently just how dinosaurs are in the One Piece world. Dinosaurs, like if you're a brachiosaur way back in the day, you're able to detach your, like all of the brachiosaurs that we saw at Little Garden were technically capable of separating their necks from their bodies. We just never saw them do that, but apparently according to One Piece logic, they are. And all pteranodons are able to pull their necks back or their head flap things back and fire their beaks like a gun at high velocity. That's just how the dinosaurs hunted back in the day. Have you seen Jurassic Park? Absolutely. So that's not their awakening, but maybe King could awaken. Let's see. Jabra. I wrote down Jabra as a former member of CP9, probably a member of CP0 right now. He's had his wolf zone for a long time. He was also the strongest before Kaku and Lucci came back, and they were stronger. Now, Kaku I wrote down, but with a question mark, because Kaku is very powerful, but he's only had his Devil Fruit for 2 years. He got his Devil Fruit during the story, during pre-time skip. So I don't know, but like if you're going to put like any sort of timeline, like maybe having the fruit for several years as a prerequisite because you have to train with it. Like Luffy's had his fruit for a long time. Lucci's had his fruit for a long time. We don't know anything about the Demon Guards. We know Kaido's had his fruit for a long time. Chopper's different because he uses drugs. Let's see. Sengoku's had his fruit for a long time. Marco's had his fruit for a long time. So they've had their fruits for a long period of time, and then they can awaken. That makes more sense. Kaku's only had his for 2 years. So he's really strong, but that might not be the only requirement, okay? But Jabra might, because he's had his fruit longer. So awakened wolf Jabra, who knows? Okay. So that's what we're working with right now. We have 46 total zones in the story. We got a lot of mythicals and ancients in the Wano arc. There was a lot of zones. I was honestly getting kind of tired of the zones. There were a lot of zones during Wano. But we have 28 normal zones. We have 9 ancient. We have 9 mythical. Obviously, there's a lot more for the smiles and the artificial. I'm not going to include those. Could you awaken an artificial zone? All right, I was going to say that if Vegapunk is the one making the artificial, because Vegapunk's the one that made Momonosuke's fruit, and he was not even sure if it could awaken. He wasn't sure, but I think that it could. I think Vegapunk's awakening, maybe Momonosuke is already in his awakened form just because it's artificial just through that, okay? But when it comes to Caesar's smiles, that's a completely different kind of method. I don't think that you can awaken that way, all right? Let's see. And then there's like just the non-canon ones that appear in like movie productions and plays and stuff like that. So yeah. But other than the smiles and the non-canon stuff, we have 46 zones in the story. Which zones would you like to see awakened? Which zones would you like to be confirmed to be awakened? I just want Oda to come out in the next SBS and have somebody ask a question like, was Kaido awakened? And Oda to just be like, yes, obviously, he was awakened, okay? But it does bring up questions because Momonosuke seems to have the same kind of power that Kaido has. Like, he can fly, he looks the same, he has the blast breath, except for he's pink and Kaido is blue. But then again, if you want to say that, like, Vegapunk was just so good at science, which he is, he managed to clone an awakened devil fruit, and then anybody that eats it could become awakened as well. Maybe just you have to train with it a little bit, because Momonosuke is obviously not perfect with it yet, but he could train and he could get better with it. I would say I'm okay with that, just because Vegapunk's a brilliant scientist. He was beating himself up because it was the wrong color, but other than that, he made a perfect clone. So, yeah, but I think that still confirms Kaido is awakened. I still think that. Marco and Sengoku are other ones, but yeah, then the ribbon thing. Like, what's up with the ribbon thing that they all seem to get, right? Like, if that's something that, like, is a tall tale sign of the awakening, you know, like, and I guess technically we didn't see a ribbon with Sengoku. Did we see a ribbon with Sengoku at Marineford? I don't know. That seems like something Oda could easily retcon because he's the freaking Daibutsu. I feel like he should have a ribbon. Marco is covered in Phoenix Flame, so you could say he's always covered in a ribbon. Kaido has the flame clouds that look like a ribbon, so if the ribbon is like the Neo statue or whatever, that's like something that's just all Awakened Zones have or something similar to it. In the case with Luffy in Gear 4th and Gear 5th, it's a steam ribbon. In the case with Kaido, it's fire, and in the case with Lucci as an Awakened normal zone. Actually, I think Lucci is the only character that has an awakened, a true awakening normal zone. That's not like the Demon Guards, like the Wild Awakening, which is very clearly different, as Vegapunk stated. So in the case with Lucci, he's the only normal zone, albeit a carnivorous zone, but still normal zone that awakened. And his ribbon isn't steam or fire, it's just like his fur becomes like fire. I don't think it's actually fire, okay? It just looks like it, okay? So, yeah, I could definitely see now why Vegapunk was so impressed that, like, oh, wow, an awakened normal zone with your mind intact. You don't see those every day. Like, so I like to think that Lucci was very, very, like, you know, special in that instance. Not just special in terms of just, like, you know, like, inherent ability, but he trained really hard to get to that point as well, okay? And that's because that's an impressive feat you don't see every day, okay? Well, anyway, that's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, I guess. We're not moving on to the next one yet. Well, actually, we're done with Porygon facts. I just don't have any Quail facts. But next video will be the letter Q Quail facts, because we haven't really talked a lot about birds on Animal Facts before. So, yeah, hang tight for that. Also, notification for this before I forget, Reverie, the Reverie number 11, hosted by Randy Troy, will be this Sunday. It will be January 15th, starting at noon. Eastern Standard Time, I believe. There's links to all that down below to go to Randy's channel and the Twitter post where it's all laid out and everything like that. So hope to see you there. We got Matt Owens as a special guest, who's, of course, one of the writers, a head writer for One Piece, the live-action Netflix series. Should be a fun discussion. I can't wait for it, so join us there on Sunday. Thanks for watching, everybody. Tekking, Barry, Sexy, Rule 63, Jason Voorhees, signing out. Later, everybody.